Good afternoon. So one of the exciting things that we see and now finally recognize is that not everybody needs to go to college, and not everybody needs to go to work for somebody else. And some of the most important innovations have come from, quote, entrepreneurs or startups. We heard earlier about the important role that small businesses and startups play in the general economy of this country. And I am lucky that we have real entrepreneurs. I'm sort of like a phony entrepreneur because I teach it, but I don't really do it, except it's the way I've existed as a, quote, consultant for a long time. But we're going to start by just going around this panel and hearing their stories about, I think it would be more important about your personal history, about how you thought and how you went about becoming an entrepreneur, who encouraged you, who discouraged you, and a little bit about the barrier to doing this. Because if we can really understand the barriers, we might be able to help a lot of our targeted group be successful and be more happy in their life because they're following their passion and they can make a big contribution. So we will just go around the room. We'll start with you. Tell us who you are and what you did.
All right. Very good. My name is Tracy Lynn, and I am the CEO of Tracy Lynn Jewels and Jewelry, and I have been an entrepreneur since I was 4 years old with my grandmother. So she sold clothes and accessories out the trunk of her car, and I was her assistant. So I didn't have to go to daycare. I went to business school. And so I've been doing this for a very long time. And I'm in the direct sales industry, so we have independent representatives. We've had as many as 50,000 independent representatives sell our product. We currently hold 30 trademarks. So we make things, like I have a bag that matches my shoes. So I have a patent for 30 different bags and probably about 33 trademarks. But we have seen some great success in helping women help themselves, have independence, be able to send their children to school. And who encouraged me? My grandmother. She was an entrepreneur since I was a little girl, so I saw it in action. Who discouraged me? Well, in school I was voted best dressed, but definitely not most likely to succeed. And so I understood then that even though, okay, you may have the presence of dressing, people didn't think I had the knowledge in my head. So I always set out to prove what I was capable of until the day when it became that I was comfortable with knowing who I am. Thank you.
That's a great story.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. I know.
All right, my name is Ted Lucas. Some of you might know I'm the owner and CEO of Slip and Slide Records. That's the home of Trick Daddy, Trina, Rick Ross, Plows, just to name a few. And I always thank those individuals for giving me a chance to help them with their music career. It was not a music industry 25 years ago here in South Florida, and they had to put their faith and trust in a young man, myself, to say, hey, I'm going to believe in you and give you that chance to go get me a record deal. I didn't just go and get them any record deal. I made sure that I protect their interests and protect my interests as well. And they weren't artists to me. Those were my business partners. So I made sure that Rick Ross can start Maybach Music because he was in a contract where he was not locked in, where he would not be a key man, where he could not do those things. And my drive and determination just came. I'm an only child, no brothers, no sisters. And my drive and determination we got to make it happen one way or another. I've always been that way. I feel that way today, still get up today, go hard. Anybody know me, I'm a risk taker. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna sit here, you tell me it can't happen, we're gonna cut a hole in the roof. We're gonna find a way to get in and make it happen. So that's me, you know. One way or another, it can happen. And I think that's important that we pull that back down to our young generation and help them understand. Like I said, My dad was incarcerated until I was in the 6th grade. I'm going to see my dad in prison. 3rd grade, they do that evaluation on you, and they tell you they're preparing a prison bed for you. The devil is a liar. It don't happen with me. And I now adopt that elementary school that put me in that type of situation, and I go back now and speak to those kids still today, this school year. All right? And just getting started, excited. I'm still 25 years old, going strong, and I love it every day, y'all. Thank you. God bless.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alpin Sheth. I'm Director of the Financial Inclusion Initiatives at FTX. We're really proud to be a sponsor of this event. But I do want to go back to how I got started. My father has a grocery store. He's had it for over 35 years in Miami-Dade. I used to work there with him, and I know how hard he struggles. I know how hard it is to raise money. I know how hard it is to keep a business going. And that's been a huge motivator for me for everything I've done since then, which is how do you make it easier for people to have a fair shake or a level playing field to operate? We already know how hard it is to operate a business, to even decide to operate a business. And we know how essential businesses are for everywhere you go, for anybody, any community you live in, you depend on local businesses and services. And so why make it harder, right? Why not make it easier for people to have an equal chance or a level playing field? So one of the core things that we're doing at FTX, coming back to entrepreneurs and people more generally, is we think that something needs to change fundamentally so that people do not have the issues that they're facing with opening up bank accounts, keeping bank accounts, having access to financial services. And as a company, we realized that some of the new technologies that are available help lower the cost significantly. And not only that, we think that it's a responsibility of financial services and financial institutions to create even just basic levels of service where people are not, hit with penalties, overdraft charges, below certain balance charges, things that just don't make any sense, because we know that some people are doing well and some people are living paycheck to paycheck. They shouldn't be penalized just to have a safe place to keep their money, to save, and to get other opportunities. So we've had the fortune to work with and get to know the OIC organization through Newton Sannon and his staff, and we've been starting to pilot programs with people that are part of the OIC network to provide better, what we think of as services that can serve them, so that they don't feel like, why is this not working for me? And we've been really fortunate to be able to get to know members from the OIC community, and we're expecting to expand this across the country. And we have some partners here that are actually visiting from Chicago, where we're going to have our next program. But it's great to be here, and I feel really fortunate to be on the same panel with all of you.
Good afternoon. My name is Fabiola Florenville. There's already a common thread. A lot of us, it's kind of been ingrained in us, entrepreneurship. I live in between two worlds, so I'm the CEO of Blueprint Creative Group, which is an 8A certified firm. Most of our work has been state, local, and we just moved into the federal sector once we became SBA certified. And I'm also a real estate developer, so I have a private equity fund, always raising money, always sourcing deals, developing real estate, and doing a senior living deal right now. So how I got started, I've been an entrepreneur as a kid. As the very first person in my bloodline born in America, that was already a drive, right? And I always knew that I was a bad employee. So I went the college route, got the master's degree, got the job offers, but I got fired from every job when I was in high school and college. So I knew that there was no way I was going to go into corporate America. And that's when I started investing in real estate, and then also started my marketing from small, right? And you start small and you grow big, and that was 2005. And over the years, I've been able to just learn along the way. That's not how I would advise it for everyone, right? Right? There's growing pains that come in with that. But in terms of what motivates me is, like Ted, being told that it's not possible, that, you know, you're too young for this or you're too new for this, you're not experienced enough. And then what also presents a barrier, I would say, is the system. I'm a woman in a man's game, real estate development, right? I'm a younger person in that world. So there's always a lot of systemic things that I have to fight. The networks, the structures are in place that are not ideal, but that's also what motivates me to keep hustling and make that happen.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shahiwa Jarrett Gallen. I am the Vice President and General Counsel of Gallen Benefits Group and also the founder of the Broward County Black Chamber of Commerce. I would say my journey has been, woo, woo, woo. I would say my journey has been very different from the other panel members. I'm not a risk taker, so I speak to those individuals who say, I'm going to get good grades. I'm going off to college. From a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And I'm a first generation, you know, as well as Fabiola. My family is originally from Jamaica. And, you know, my family is like doctor, lawyer, engineer, architect. That's the culture that you come from. But I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and so that's the path that I took. I like taking on that challenge. I wanted to be an advocate for people who couldn't speak for themselves, and so that was very important to me. And kind of had that in the back of my mind, you know, one day, someday, you know, after I retire from being a judge, perhaps I'll have my own law firm. So being an entrepreneur seemed like a far-flung dream, you know, like maybe when I'm, you know, 50 or 55 or 60. But as I started to work, and I was a litigator, so, you know, we're grinding it out in court 3 to 4 times a week, and you start thinking about that future and what makes sense for you. So after 18 years of working for the federal government, the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice, I decided to become an entrepreneur. But I was very calculated. I didn't just jump off a cliff. That's my husband. He jumps off the cliff and he's starting it, you know. I said, no, I took 2 years, got the very certifications that I wanted. I saved up a really, you know, nice sizable chunk of money. But even when I got to that point to say, okay, at some point I have to tell my supervisor I'm leaving, you know, I'm running this whole detention center and I gotta let him know I'm not gonna be here, it still takes that extra push, that leap of faith to say you have to do it, you know, although you set everything up. And I sat there and made that call. Although I knew I was doing the right thing, it still was difficult, but I did it. And stepped into this new role with the boutique employee benefits brokerage firm that I run alongside my husband. And we've been able to grow it. We have city clients, some large cities here in the county in Broward. We work with some large data and technological clients. So it's worked out well. But for me, once again, it was all about planning and taking calculated risks. What motivates me from the time I was younger is just knowing that there are other little girls and other little boys that look like me that have the talent, have the skill, have the ability, have the will, but somehow they're just not making it onto that path. So, you know, like you, Ted, when I graduated from law school, I started my little nonprofit, and I go back and I talk to kids at Parkway Middle School, Boyd Anderson, Dillard High School. We've weaved their entrepreneurship program into the chamber because if they're not seeing us, if they're not understanding what can be, then their dreams are gonna die. So for me, that's what motivates me to say, I'm not special, I'm like you. Come on, you can do this too.
Good afternoon, and I guess I'm sitting next to the moderator because I'm not a fabulous star of an entrepreneur like these to my right, but I'm more on the teaching side than the opportunity side. I'm Sandy McDonald, and I'm the director of the Office of Economic and Small Business Development for Broward County. And what I'm excited about listening to these entrepreneurs is a portion of what we do in our office. So we're government at the end of the day, good, bad, or ugly. When it's all said and done, there's places we should be. There's some places we shouldn't be. Entrepreneur, startup, and small business is one of the places that Broward County's commission believes that we should be. So I'm excited that we actually run a entrepreneurship program. We are part of the Kaufman Fast Track program. We do half-day workshops as well as a full 10-course preparation for business, startup, from concept to idea to white paper to business plan to launch, including throwing a couple of coins out there at the end to help them launch. But what's more exciting is from the small business and the entrepreneur side. To be in an office, to be a director, to have quality staff where you can truly afford opportunities for the person with that dream, to turn that dream into reality, to see one of my small businesses who may have doubted government's real opportunity, real intent, and to find out 4 years later they're doing over $9 million a year, where when you met them they were doing 80,000. That's the ideal of making sure where the government should be, they have the opportunity to provide the support. One of the things that certainly motivates me is that it's not all Broward. I'm excited about one of the organizations that we're collaborating with, which is also AERO. It's the Alliance of Entrepreneurial Resource Organizations right here in Broward. About 13 to 14 groups from Broward College, Urban League, JM Family, quite a few of us who recognize at different phases of entrepreneurship, there must be someone, there must be some group who can hold that entrepreneur or that aspiring entrepreneur's hand. And because of that, you can help them do what I truly get excited about. So I don't say this the wrong way. I am happy when I go to a ribbon cutting. I'm happy because I got some small businesses in here and I was happy at your ribbon cutting. I get excited when I go to your 5th and your 10th and your 15th year anniversary. It's about sustainable business and making sure entrepreneurs know not how to start a business, but to sustain a business. So I'm excited about the opportunity that we get to pour into entrepreneurs, and even the county has a mechanism by which for some of the things that we buy as a county, many of our entrepreneurs scope out, they do their R&D, and they recognize the county has a ordinance law that at least 25% of what we buy from small businesses in Broward. So when entrepreneurs recognize that you're doing your research and you're trying to identify outside of that which may have been your passion, what it is you might have an interest in, we're just one of those opportunities. And I heard my friend Althea speak about it this morning, and the HHS speak about it this morning. The federal government, county government, city and local government are just some opportunities where entrepreneurs and small businesses can also cut or carve out their niche and opportunity. So I'm just excited that we can play a small role in a bigger pie of growing small business. And I'll add to what I heard earlier this morning. For Broward specifically, 89% of all the businesses in Broward County, and I have over 77,000 businesses in the county, 89% of all have 20 employees or less. So we're truly about the small business, and it really started because of entrepreneurs like this. Thank you.
So I'm a visiting professor at the University of South Florida in entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. And I also want to give a plug to the SBA. I don't see, oh, there's the lady in white. There she is. Because there are a lot of courses, there's a lot of mentoring, there are a lot of things. So I'm going to ask the panel now, and we'll go in reverse order. Why is it that we don't see as many, and I'll call it in our targeted group, who are really taking advantage of those services or realizing that maybe they would rather have their own business and not work for somebody else, or they have a passion about, you know, getting plastic out of the water and out of the sea, or they have a passion but they don't quite see how to translate that into a sustainable living, basically. So why don't we see, given there are the resources here, and most of the universities are doing it now, a lot of businesses are beginning to do an innovation section in their business, why aren't we seeing our targeted population taking advantage of those? What are the barriers? Let's see if we can understand what's the barriers so that we can knock it down.
I would say some of the barriers, which we can look at as challenges, but you get to turn the challenge into a real opportunity. Some is the messaging. We always have to remember that the message that we're telling sometimes is not received in the manner upon which we're telling it. Sometimes you also have to recognize that in your messaging, you have to meet the person receiving where they are. Sometimes even inclusive of all the resources I just described. If I'm not creating those opportunities in their community, if I'm not catching them early on, then at the end of the day, they're believing the other things they're told and they're shown. And one of the hurdles is, and I heard it mentioned by at least 3 of them, having immediate exposure while you're young. And most of us also know if you didn't have a parent or grandparent or immediate relative that was an entrepreneur, we're told K through 12 that it was actually about college. Right. I'm actually from Michigan. You were told K through 12, and my colleague would tell you the same. We were told K through 12 and maybe college, but we were K through 12, go to the factory. No one K through 12 told you about entrepreneurship. Right. No one told you about the creative opportunity of not just getting a job, but owning a company and have folks work for you. So I do recognize that even as a county, as we try to do more, and we're intentionally doing it with our community partners, because they're the ones who are really the boots on the ground, some of the barriers has been the messaging and getting the information out and showing young people and showing targeted populations this too is for them. It's not like a alternative or an option. No, this is yours. This is for you, but I do believe messaging has gotten in the way.
I would agree with some of that, Sandy. As I mentioned earlier, the Broward County Black Chamber works with and has since our inception Dillard High School, and they have an entrepreneurship program there. And initially when we went in, we kind of brought our entrepreneurs in as speakers. And the next year I said, we want to get a little bit more involved. And they have a competition in which we have to get these students ready, to build a business. They have to have a website. They have to, create a product, sell the product. They have to learn how to pitch, etc. And you see the gap between our target population, right, and the other schools that compete in this competition. And so I agree with you, Sandy, on that level. It's injecting that information in there early, and that's why it's so important to go back, because other students have access to that information, have access to the knowledge, have access to people who are currently entrepreneurs and at a very high level at an early age, and it makes all the difference. And you see it in the way the booths are set up, the access to capital that these kids have, and the products that they come up with. So it really is an obligation for us as entrepreneurs, us as some government, to get into these schools, educational institutions, and talk to our kids about it early on. I remember before the pandemic, we provided a keynote speaker for Dillard Tech Week. I brought a professor from FIU who's in charge of their Mission to Market program, Morehouse grad, and he came up there and electrified them talking about patents, and I didn't hear about patents in high school and middle school, and these kids skipped lunch to talk to him about AI and all these different ideas that they had. So we really have to get in there early and invest in our kids, because if they see it early enough, then they'll understand that it is a path that's for them. I also think that there is a fear factor, because it's comfortable to have a job. It's comfortable to be steady and stable. And so, it's difficult to say, well, I'm going to, take this risk, and I don't know where this road will lead me. And I say to that, it's about, once again, I'm a calculated risk taker. It's about the preparation. So for me, the more prepared you are, then it becomes less of this, I'm jumping off of a cliff, and it becomes a calculated risk that now makes sense for you. So I tell my entrepreneurs as I meet them in the chamber, I tell them to do what we do. We do our research. We make sure that where our service is needed, who we're targeting as a potential client. We research these clients. We go to events specifically to meet these CFOs and CEOs. We're not just out networking and, for the fun of it. There's an intention everywhere we go. Who needs our service? You have to understand that. And then what is that overall market? Is there enough money to be made and that you can inject yourself in that market and also make money, even though there are others in that market. So you have to do your research before you just launch your business. Because I run into a lot of people that say, I want to start a business. I can cook. I can this, I can that. And I'm like, well, okay, well, where's the plan? Do you understand where your different streams of revenue can come from? Like I had a restaurant I have in the chamber. And before the pandemic, yeah, people just come on in. That's your business model. People come on in, you serve them. But now we have a pandemic. I'm like, so are you online now? What products do you have online? Because you have to understand that even if people can't come through your door, you got to get your product out there. Are you doing catering? Are you delivering? So we have to understand the model that you're creating when you set up your business, understand your target market. And with, the internet, that's all so possible now. The information is at your fingertips. When we were coming up, I had to go to the library and look up everything and flip through books. Everything's so convenient now. So I would say it's those two things, working with our young people early, but then as an individual, if you're serious about getting into business, doing that research. And the last thing I would say is capital, the funding. Whether you're a black business, potential owner as a black business trying to start up, or any small business, capital is crucial, and it's difficult. It's one of the number one questions we get as a chamber. Where is business funding? Where is the funding? Where's the funding? And I say to people all the time, you want free money to start your business. So you want somebody to give you free money for you to then be able to make money. And I said, no, you have to understand, it's an investment that you're making. So you have to prepare yourself once again to be able to qualify for the capital. And we also help our members and others get capital because, it's crucial. If you don't have the money for some, businesses, you're not starting up.
You took something out of my mouth. The reality is that it's scary being in business. It's not easy. And we glamorize entrepreneurship a lot. And really, it's not for the faint of heart. I say this every day, and one of the things that I remind myself in business, you eat what you kill, right? So if you're not ready to starve for it, and if you're not ready to do whatever it takes to hustle for it, you're not gonna eat, and you will die in business. And that's the side that we don't share. We glamorize, go start your business, which is why you have a lot of small businesses who stay at that small level because we just said, go out and do it. Go be an entrepreneur. Instead, there's more of us that probably should be focused on entrepreneurship, where in your professional worlds, right, you can be starting up, taking whatever skill set you have in your professional world and doing something in parallel with that, because entrepreneurship is not easy. I was lucky to where, so I don't know how to be an employee, so I never had a job. So at 20-something, when I started it, I didn't know what failure was, right? So it was nothing for me to say, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And if I can't eat today, oh well, I'm gonna figure out how I'm gonna make it. But when you're at 40 plus, you can't do that, right? So it looks different. And then even then, when you're in business, you have different leaps that you take. So I've been in business almost 20 years, and I would say probably like the last 10 years is when I really made the big leap. And then even then, I got to shout out Althea over there with the SBA. Is she there? So... Yeah, give Althea a hands up. And I'm going to say this because I made another leap in my business 2 years ago when I became 8A certified. And the Miami-Dade County is one of my company's clients, and we hosted a workshop with the SBA. So I'm doing the workshop, but I sat in the audience like, she really talking to me. So I left there and did my 8A certification, but guess what? It took 2 years. And I know a lot of businesses that go through the 8A process and they tap out and they don't make it, because it's not easy, and I did it myself, so it's not easy. So if you're not willing to take that risk and do what's scary, you're not gonna do it. But then guess what? 2 years ago, we finally got our 8A, happened November 2020, COVID, right? So I can't go to DC and meet with agencies and network, because you gotta hustle once you get the certifications. So I can't do that, but I knew that we wanted to be in the federal business because that was gonna be what was gonna take us to the next step. So now I'm doing the Zooms and the hustling behind the scenes to do what you would have normally done in person. So it's an everyday grind, and I think that because we're not always showing the pitfalls in business, we don't show that it might take you 10 years to even realize the vision number one that you had on that board for that business. a lot of times we fail. So those 77,000, the 89% of those businesses that are small, 20 or less, there's sometimes a little piece that they're missing that could take them from being that small business to making that leap. So for us, the federal sector was that. We got our first federal contract 3 months ago, a $75 million contract with a pool of 10 businesses with the United States Trade and Development Agency. But that leap came by saying, look, I'm gonna tough it out and do this 8A. They push back on you so much to where you almost want to quit the process, but then we actually pushed through it, and then that made that leap. So when we can share with small businesses like, hey, it's not gonna be easy. You're gonna go hungry, you're gonna starve, you might have to figure out if you have employees, how you're gonna pay people, how you're gonna pay yourself. When we stop glamorizing entrepreneurship the way we do and we give people the reality checks, then people can say, you know what, I don't wanna do that, because there are times where I would trade, let me take your paycheck, and go work on somebody else's clock, right? So I can be done at 5 p.m., because that's the other thing. You're not done at 5 p.m. when you're in business. But I love what I do. That's what drives me. So I was made for entrepreneurship. And if that's not you, it's okay. If you're not willing to take the risk, it's okay. That's where entrepreneurship, you can still hold it down with your 9 to 5, but then you have skills that you've been gaining from your employer that you can use as a consulting opportunity. You can still do your contract work on the side, and at some point you might say, I'm ready at this point after 4 or 5 years as an entrepreneur, and I can now take the leap versus doing what I did when I was stupid and young, and at 20 was like, I could be in business and I'm gonna start it with no experience, so, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just want to double down on something that was said about exposure and education. So part of the work that I do, I'm also a partner at a VC firm, a venture capital firm here based in Miami, is when you talk about investment, there's some parallels. Because when you ask people why they're not saving in certain ways, why they're not investing their money in certain ways, there's a lot of material available online. There's a lot of things they could ask from other people, but not everybody does it. And I think there's a huge intimidation factor also when it comes to investment that's kind of in parallel. And it's because people either don't have exposure to it when they're early, when they're younger, and when you get older, it's hard to ask questions. People are made to feel stupid, even though those questions are valid. And I think that's a huge component of when we started doing the program with OIC, we would ask people, okay, do you have, how much generally do you have in terms of savings? Have you invested money? Things, just basic things about their financial situation. People felt, like, oh my God, I don't want to see what other people have because I don't want to look bad. I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing. But as people opened up, we found out that people learned quite a bit just in a few sessions with us, that it was just a matter of them feeling comfortable to ask these questions, to learn about something that was crucial to them. Obviously, if you're starting a business, bookkeeping, accounting, being able to understand revenue and expenses is crucial, right? Otherwise, you can't survive. But even at a household level or as an individual level, that's critical for people's economic well-being and their mobility. So that's, I think, an important factor that we think is essential for anything having to do with what we're doing with financial inclusion, but that includes economic empowerment and economic development. One other piece from the venture capital side, because I work at a firm that hands out checks to small businesses or to startups, one of the things we know is it's not a mystery, is that not enough of these checks are going to women, women entrepreneurs, people of color entrepreneurs. And what we're seeing in Miami right now, if you look at the past, is a shift. People are talking about it more, and more VCs that are people of color are actually coming to Miami. I don't know how many of you guys know that, but many are now coming to Miami because they're realizing what we need to learn from each other. How can we build out ecosystems where we're actually giving out the checks in more equitable ways, because that has not been happening for decades and decades and decades. And that is part of what's contributing to the situation that we're in, right? I think, but part of it is talking about it, but it's also getting VCs to think differently, to have different kinds of VCs that are actually at the table. When it at least comes to the world that I'm in, which is primarily technology companies. And one of the ways that we're doing that with the company I work with called Borderless Capital is we've started working very locally on incubating and accelerating companies in South Florida. So we have programs that are dedicated to selecting companies that are based in the region, giving them a certain amount of opportunity for building up their initial capital, and we work them through a 10-week to 3-month program where they learn about all the basics about starting a tech company. But because we're in the tech sector and the fintech sector, we have experts coming from all over the world, basically helping them, answering questions for them, and then we advise them as they're graduating. And at the end of the day, we're able to say, okay, now that you finished this, we're going to put in some money. We're going to bring other people that are going to put in some money. And the hope is, in Miami at least, and in South Florida, we can build up a larger and larger network of people and a kind of a program where people don't have that intimidation factor or don't feel like, oh, I'm based here, I'm not going to get access to that. But it's actually a welcoming environment, and we're hoping that we can grow it further. We just started it last year, and yeah.
All right. I'm Ted. I'm always going to look at things from a different perspective. I'm always the one that's going to come left across the middle. Listen, when somebody want to get elected, what they do? They go to the churches, right? And you'll see the signs everywhere. You'll see them in the community. You'll see them doing things that they want to do to get to the community. If we're going to change, we got to do the same thing it takes to get elected. We got to be back in the community. We got to get back to the church. We got to be back on the parks. You got to see those signs. Those signs come out when it's election time. You see them everywhere. If we really want to get a message across, we know how to get it across. We want somebody to vote for us, we know how to get it across. We got to do the same thing when we want to make a difference in our community. Right now, everybody in here know, if you're from South Florida, every park around here finna be full tomorrow. Saturday. Maybe tomorrow too, because some people play on Friday. It's going to be thousands of kids. Buki and Bam Bam, 4 years old, ready to play football right now tomorrow. We got to meet them where they at and help educate them, because this is a young, talented man that's working at Home Depot, Lowe's, and all these places, and he need those family and friends rounds. He have a great idea. We got to meet them where they at, and they got to know how to get to you. I think a lot of you have great organizations in here, right? And you might be doing a great job getting to the person that's seeking, that's really trying to find. But we got to make it easy access and make it as simple as possible for a young man like myself, where there was no record company down here in South Florida. I didn't know how to start no record company, but I had to find it. If you make access to this stuff and we get it to our community, things have changed tremendously. Like I said, if we can do a vote, we can do it to make a difference in our community, and that's the way I look at it.
How do we get the information, more information out to our targeted audience, so to speak? One of the main things, I think, is exposure. Exposure, 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 especially at a young age. I told you my story. I was exposed at 4 years old. My grandmother was an entrepreneur. She didn't tell me, she showed me. Being an only child, my mother wanted me to be a doctor. So that's what her exposure was. Growing up in Detroit and Michigan, all of my family worked in the factory. My mother said, be a doctor. My grandmother taught entrepreneurship. So if we have that exposure, and not just exposure, it's great to go and we talk, and I do the same thing, but imagine if we can mentor. Imagine if we can really start to partner with the young people and to be with them and guide them. I remember the first time I did a parachute jump out of a plane. And I remember going through the orientation. And they didn't talk about anything about the jump, but for 2 minutes to tell you how to breathe through your teeth. But the rest of the 45 minutes training was about how you couldn't sue them if you died. 45 minutes about that. So that's all I heard was about how you couldn't sue if you died in this jump. But think about the information people are hearing about entrepreneurship. It's either glamorized or it's, you better not do it, you better stick with that job, you need to get that pension, you're not ready, you can't get financing. But for those of us who know how to bootstrap it and make it happen, if you see that in your life, then you can understand it. So when I jumped out the plane, I was stuck on the door. They had to push me out. I wasn't ready. And he said, we're not gonna take you unless you put your feet over the edge. I wouldn't put my feet over the edge. I didn't want to jump. But I had a confident guy. He was confident. So he said, oh, I see your feet are over the edge. He knew my feet weren't over the edge. He pushed me out that plane. And we were just spinning and spinning. And he was putting up the peace signs. He was laughing because they were doing a GoPro. And I'm just trying to remember what they said about how you breathe. I couldn't remember. I thought I was going to die. I confessed all my sins. And eventually, I calmed down. I went with the process. I knew that I was in tandem, in mentorship with somebody who knew what they were doing. The parachute popped. And then he said, look around at the scene. I wanted to say, man, if you don't get this thing down, I can't see nothing. But I landed, and I landed safely because I was in tandem, mentorship, partnership with somebody who knew what they were doing. Thank the good Lord.
That's it.
So let me put a hypothetical together for this group to react to. And let's say that OIC and all of you panelists decide that we're going to do a program, and let's do middle school level or high school. And so we're going to them in their location. So it's either a school or a church, et cetera. And we're going to build like a WeWorks, which is available to others, as I would say. But that it's going to have some of the programs that the SBA has, and whether it's the business canvas or whichever ones you happen to like these days. And you all are all going to be mentors so that they can see real people from their community who have gone through it, and you're not going to make it glamorized. You're going to talk about, not having dinner that night and not going home at 5 o'clock and giving up a social life or whatever so that it's real for them. And that there is a prize at the end which your VC is going to contribute to, which he volunteered. You may not have heard that, but I heard that. And so that there's a real reason to really go through this 10-week or 8-week session. Do you think that we could double or triple the queue for in our target group getting some really good ideas and good programs? And
These kids, have you seen what these kids are coming up with these days?
no, I work with them and I love it.
I mean, just the tech side, because they're playing Roblox and whatever other games they're playing, and that's exposing them to a lot of that. They're doing the videos, right? Monetizing YouTube, monetizing TikTok. Ted, you had the Miami NFT week, right? And those were like 20-something-year-olds making money in NFTs that we're still trying to figure out what that is. But these kids, I mean, once they have the access and somebody tells them, hey, this is how you structure it and formalize it, they'll blow it through the roof.
Agreed. I'll even say definitely in tandem, but if Newton and OIC took the program that they started, even with the county, with the prisoner reentry and the transportation opportunity for cleaning the buses and janitorial services. He started as a pilot with us. It's now a full-fledged contract with us, and he's created opportunities for those who participate to end up with full-time jobs with the county, but to your point, as a pivot. If we took that same opportunity and took it to a middle school and explained the program where folks were working at a job who have now turned it into the owners of a company, and showed them where individuals who had challenges in their community were still able to do this, yes, that would add more value. It would add more value simply because they would see people who look like them from their community, some who've had challenges throughout the years, But at the end of the day, because of an OIC and other community partners, someone came at a middle school and explained, you can be that entrepreneur. I think it would certainly rock it and move forward.
So what if we found a middle school that would think of this as an after-school program? Maybe
I have a few.
you got a few?
No, absolutely. You know, and it doesn't even have to be that structure, because I don't know. I think when they're kids, you kind of have to let them have that imagination, let it run wild, let them experiment. And I've seen a few programs where the kids actually come before a crowd. It's very informal. They get to pitch their ideas, talk about what they want to do, and they get some form of seed money, whether it's $500 or $1,000. The program makes sure they spend it on the materials that they actually need to start the business, and you let them fly. You let them go out there and try. Obviously they have somebody by their side to guide them a bit. But the whole point behind that is, and even I learned, because we talked about this failure thing, and you know, I'm the one that doesn't like to take risks. I'm calculated, right? So I'm not trying to fail. I got to plan my way out of any pitfall. But the point is, at that age, yeah, okay, so that lemonade stand didn't work, but then I have this other idea, and then you go in and you do that idea. Imagine what they come up with or they create when they're 15 and 18 and 20, and that's what we're seeing at Dillard. These kids are talking about AI at 16 and 15, and all these different ideas that they have. But once again, we come upon the obstacle of the funding to really let these things fly. The talent is there. These kids have it. We have to fund it and push it.
Yeah, just add also that I entirely agree with that. We recently did a hackathon that we also partnered with OIC on, and several people in the community across Miami-Dade, Broward County. So FTX did a hackathon with middle school students, high school students. It was remarkable to see the dynamism, the creativity. Some of those videos are available online, just seeing the pitches that people were able to make, even in a short period of time, the amount of work that people put in. It doesn't mean every single one of them is going to become an entrepreneur, but they develop skills that are going to take them really far, no matter what they decide to do. And maybe they don't become an entrepreneur, immediately. Maybe they decide like 20 years later, 30 years later. But there's definitely the talent here, and I think it is a matter of doing the programs, providing the funding, as was pointed out, and I think that it could make a huge difference.
Okay, so OIC, Newton, you got your task. SBA, you in? SBA, are you in? SBA is in, county's in.
County's in.
All you around the table in to be mentors?
Yeah. Let me add something to that. Fabio talked a little bit about, a lot of y'all hear about the music stuff I did, but back in 2021, Bitcoin was taking place in Overtown, Wynwood area. I attended Bitcoin. It was a line down the street, millions and millions of people in line trying to get in. And once I got in, I looked around. I didn't see enough local people attending Bitcoin 2021. I didn't see enough people that looked like me. So I went down to the city of Miami and met with Mayor Suarez and the Venture Miami team. And we was able to create Miami NFT Week. A lot of people don't know that I'm a co-founder of Miami NFT Week. And I did that for people that look like me. And we was able to have an incredible conference. We're coming back this year as well for Tech Week again, Tech Month. To have thousands of people there was great. But to look and see a gentleman from Russia sitting next to a guy with gold teeth and gold chains on his neck, that's what made me feel good.
Yeah.
That means the mission was accomplished. When you were able to get people from my community to network with people from around the world, that was a great feeling. And from that, we now have partnered with Florida Memorial, and we have an Innovation Tech Lab that's opening September 1st. So I want everybody to know, thank you.
Congrats. That's big. That's good.
I want everybody to know we got a tech hub on South Florida's only HBCU, and it's a new. I know some people might not like this, but it's a new king of the jungle, and it's a lion. So some of y'all rattlers ain't gonna like it, and some of y'all wildcats ain't gonna like it. But it's a new king of the jungle. It's a lion. That's Florida Memorial. I want y'all to understand, and we mean business. I'm telling you right now. And it ain't only for Miami Gardens, it's for the whole South Florida. And I think just doing it at high school is great, But if we can start that program that we're doing September 1st on Florida Memorial, it can trickle back into our community. And we can work together and send that person back to that junior high school, send that person back to that high school, and everybody come together on South Florida's only HBCU that we need to put our arms around in these programs and come work with us at Florida Memorial. He ain't paid me to say this. This is my heart. And I tell everybody, Florida Memorial gave me an opportunity that money couldn't even pay me to do. This is my heart. This is what I feel that I have to do. I have made millionaires in the music business, and it's time to make millionaires in this tech space.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. Newton agreed to join that, and we're no problem, right? And SBA, my ladies in? They're in. You guys in?
In.
Everybody in? We'll end on that note. Department of Labor. They're in.
Thank you.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
I feel like I just ran an auction. But we'll come back next year. You'll lead it. You'll be sitting here. And because it's got to come from the community. It can't come from outside.
Right.
We've had enough attempts at outside, and it just doesn't work.
If I'm going to lead it next year, we got to have results, people. I mean, everybody. If we're going to do it, we ain't just talking about it. They call me say do. If we say something, we going to do it, all right?
Yep.
So we need results, all right? So if you're going my time is valuable. That's the most important thing in this world is time. And if we're going to do it, we're going to make it happen. Anybody that know me, I mean that. I don't know if I told you. I got one part I want to say to y'all. I bought my first car in the 7th grade before I had my driving license. My grandma did not allow me to drive the car, but I told everybody in my junior high school I got a car. That's the gentleman y'all talking to right now. So call me Mr. Say-Do.
Okay, Say-Do, we're in. Panel, thank you very much. She's been giving me time that we were supposed to end like 10 minutes ago, but we were having so much fun we couldn't do it. Anyway, thank you. You've been an amazing panel, and you're going to make a real difference. Next year, we're back with results. Thank you.